been involved with the recovery of stolen antiquities, which I think presents a lot of challenges for the preservation and protection of Indian art. What are your views on that?
See, challenges. To my mind, India is one country which has the greatest number of antiquities, structures, all kinds of structures, and loose sculptures and entire sites. I think only China can approach us, but I don't know. India has. Even only the Archaeological Survey of India looks after about 3,500 sites and monuments of national importance. Other than that, the various state directorates have their own lists. So there must be more than 10,000 sites which are under protection. To manage all these, dating from say the 2nd or 3rd century before Christ down to the 19th century, is a monumental task. Apart from that, there are lack of resources. That is a challenge. Very difficult to manage that. And you refer to ethics also?
Ethical practices.
What ethical practices, if I may ask you, what kind of ethical practices?
So it is the onus should be on the purchasers.
Exactly, exactly. See, there are hardly any ethical practices. See, many of these monuments are understaffed, right? Practically anyone can go and pick up what they want and sell them in the market. Even if a purchaser, a collector is a conscientious collector, he may not know. Most of them are not conscientious, they just want to build up their collections. Even museums until quite recently bought antiques left, right and center without caring. Many of the museums abroad are full of these. In fact, there are some museum managers who claim, who say why is India is so possessive about its antiquity? They should be open. Let anyone purchase, let anyone go and have their antiquities. So, okay, this heritage belongs to the world as they claim. But in that case, let the world come to India and appreciate and admire the heritage. Why do you rape a monument, break off a sculpture and take it abroad? Come to India and say, for example, this is my observation. You see the museums abroad, look at their sculptures closely, you will see that most of the sculptures are without their feet. That is because a sculpture is surrounded by a frame. The frame together with the sculpture may weigh 1,000 kilos, but you break the sculpture at the feet, it may be only 200 kilos. So they leave the frame behind. Some ASI sheds where I have visited, they have only frame. They proudly keep the frames, but they don't realize that the sculpture has been stolen since long and it is adorning some private collection or even museums. So that is what happens. There is no ethical practices. In fact, we don't even know how much is going away, and it's a great challenge.
There have been some high profile cases in recent years where warehouses in New York and London were discovered, in which stolen antiquities were recovered in great quantities. Some of these people have been convicted since. Some of these objects have been repatriated. The repatriated objects very often will sit in godowns and warehouses in India and won't be sent back to the sites from where they were stolen. Do you think that process also needs to be speeded up?
See, the US Homeland Security investigations contacts me. I run a website called www.plunderedpast.in for the repatriation of illegally exported Indian antiquities. Now, among the challenges that you refer to, nobody will know when a sculpture is stolen from an unknown site like Karitalai or Baroli or Atru, unless the theft is brought to public knowledge, unless its photographs are published in local and other newspapers, unless the people come to know, local people, the Indians in general, as well as potential collectors, unless they come to know that something has been stolen and the theft reported at a particular police station, they will not know. So, the government agencies should, as soon as some theft is brought to its notice, they should publish, I have been saying this in my lectures, they should publish its photographs, bring it to the notice of the people, and then wait. So, they say that they are informing the foreign embassies, if in case it has been smuggled out. Now, in order to be able to publish those photographs, they must have the photographs. See? They must have photographs not only in stamp size, but photographs of the whole sculpture from different angles, from where possible, from the back side also, profile of the face, etc. Then only something can happen. So, what I do on my website is, I am an individual. So, that when I come to know about these thefts, I trace the site. In my website, I mention the site's name, I mention the first information report, the police station where the theft has been reported, the FIR number, the date of the theft. I publish photographs also, so that, and then it's a public website. So, I bring it to the notice of the world at large, so that they cannot claim having purchased something that they did not know. They know that this is stolen from the ASI sculpture shed at, say, Karitalai. In 2006, 9 sculptures were stolen by breaking open the lock of the Karitalai strong room. The attendants were threatened, were beaten up, and they were threatened with death, and they were smuggled out. They are there in my website. These photographs are there, and the reports are also there. Scotland Yard has caught one Vaikuntha Chaturmurti from the same Karitalai since, say, 15-16 years, and I reported it to the ASI, but it is up to them to retrieve them. So, this is the thing that happens. Unless you make these things public, they will never come back. Even if you are a conscientious collector, you will not know. Like, say, from Baroli, Natesha was stolen in 1998. The man who was responsible for it cleverly had a replica made, and after a few weeks, once the replica was ready, he put it in a gunny bag and left it at the entrance of the Baroli site. The attendants and the authorities thought that theft must have brought him some bad luck. Therefore, he has returned it. They were very happy, but the police took it, that local police station. I went to the police station, inspected it, that it is not the original. The original had been sold. So, then I informed the ASI also. I sent them 10 by 12 inch photographs, that this is not the real thing. You don't think, you shouldn't believe that he has returned the original thing, he sold it. Then I followed up with the policeman also. Last year in January, no, we are in 2023, So 2023 January, the Prime Minister brought it back, and it was in the newspapers, garlanded and all. Another case, this sculpture was from the Gateshwara temple at Baroli. There is a mandapa in front of the Gateshwara temple, which is known as the Singara Chauri. In the Singara Chauri, the central chatushki or a central square had 4 corner pillars. Each of the pillars must have had a small figurine of an apsara. The ASI recorded one sculpture on top of the column in the northwest corner. In 1960, I have the photograph. In 1965, it was stolen, and some private dealers sold it to somebody, and finally it ended up in the Denver Art Museum in the USA. Denver Art Museum clearly said this is from the Singara Chauri at Gateshwara. Now, since 2005, I have been following up with the ASI, and each time I do it, I enclose the 1960 photograph, I enclose a book which has 2 or 3 pages of description, then the photograph of the sculpture that was in situ, then pages from the book in which this is published. From 2005 until 2010. So finally, I wrote to the Denver Museum itself, and they replied that yes, we got it as a loan from someone, and then it was converted into a gift. So please tell us if we can do anything. So I said, you return it, because it is a nationally protected monument and you have no right to have it. The man who gave it to you had no right to own it, and he had no right to give it to you, and you have no right to preserve it, to own it. So it is on my website. Then the correspondence dried up. Then recently a reporter from the Denver Post contacted me about it. I gave him the information, and I followed up with the RTI application with the ASI also. I came to know that quietly the museum has removed it from its website so that there is no loss of face, deaccessioned it, and they have, ASI told me that they have given it to the authorities in New York. It has still not come back. So from 2005 until 2024, in fact from 1965 to 2024, you have to track. There are many. Others also tell me that they spend a lot of time to retrieve just one sculpture takes so long.
So, I think I hear from what you are saying that there is a great need for documentation of sites and antiquities. Absolutely. So that we can track if anything is stolen. Absolutely. And the other great need is for a legal cell within the archaeological survey which actively pursues these cases. But the documentation, I think, could involve a number of educational institutions. And if you had to advise educational institutions on having cells that do extensive documentation, how would you go about it?
See, the ASI is a legal department once wrote to me that once these sculptures come back to India, what will happen? I wrote back saying that you don't expect a flood. This is some 10, more than 15 years ago. There will never be a flood. Now, recently there has been much awareness, and American museums, etc., American authorities have been returning many, like say sometimes 215, a lot of sculptures. Now, once they come back, the authorities must have some place where they can house them. Now, for example, in Rajasthan, there is a less known site called Atru. I was working with the ASI at their invitation. There is a mound. They were removing, they were declustering that mound. When the mound was exposed, the debris were removed. Early 10th century plinth was exposed, which had 4 sculptures of Mithunas or amorous couples, which had been buried since centuries. Okay. Because they had been buried, they were practically intact. They are, along with the pediments or udgamas, they are 4.5 feet, but the sculptures themselves are say 3 feet by 2 feet. Very beautiful late 9th century sculptures. This was in 2006 and 7. Then for some reason, because the head was transferred, that work there stopped. In April 2009, one couple was stolen. Okay. Then September of the same year, another was stolen. That is, 2 out of 4 were stolen. And the one that was stolen in September 2009 appeared in a prominent art journal published from Hong Kong as being on sale. So, within 6 months, it had travelled from Atru by a roundabout route to via foreign countries to London. So, the ASI didn't have any documentation, but I had. Even when they were the mound is partly cleared and the sculpture is only partly exposed, I take photographs. So, I wrote to several institutions and scholars with photographs of all the 4 sculptures in situ. Then the one that is advertised, the dealer came to know and wrote to me that he has been in this business since 40 years, but he has never dealt in stolen antiquities. That is what he wrote. Finally, he returned it. Once I knew only about the whereabouts of one. Once one was found, the second was also found, and they were with the Indian authorities, and they were handed over to the Indian authorities on 14th January 2014. I was in Devgarh at that time. So, evening, it was morning in New York. I received a call from the special agent that just now we have handed over the 2 Atru sculptures to the Indian consulate, Indian authorities, and you were acknowledged. They were sitting there in the Indian consulate for a long time. Finally, they returned to India, and now they are in the Purana Killa, some hall in the Purana Killa. But they should put them in the National Museum or somewhere. Another site, Kaner Ki Putli, which is in the wilderness. The head of the Archaeological Survey of India had an attendant there, but thefts took place. He added one more, so 2 attendants. Nobody would be willing to stay there the night. It's such a wilderness, wild site. So he had all the sculptures removed and took them away, and put them in a sculpture shed. But that is not the best thing, no? So they have a great challenge to how to preserve and safeguard them where they are. You cannot remove every sculpture and put it in a museum.
Your involvement with the recovery of stolen antiquities also encompass the recovery of objects from Bharhut. Would you like to relate that to us?
That is a very interesting case. See, the ruined stupa of Bharhut near Satna in central India was discovered by Alexander Cunningham, the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India in 1873. It was already a ruined monument. You can imagine, you think of Sanchi, it must have been about the same date and about the same size, but it was, Sanchi is intact. This was mostly ruined. Cunningham collected uh, everything possible from the site. It's a vast site. It was a vast stupa that the four gateways alone were like say 20 feet tall, and human figures are more than 6 feet tall. There were railings, all the bits that he could collect. He had them collected. He also surveyed the nearby villages of Uchehra, Pataura, etc., Batanmara. He had a road built up to the railway line, the GIP railway line. He had a railway station built at a village called Lagargawa, only for uploading all this material on the goods trains, which were sent to Calcutta, where the Indian Museum has a special gallery dedicated to sculptures from Bharhut. Now, when Cunningham was surveying Bharhut, he found that in the private shrine of a zamindar, there was a 6 feet 6 inches tall Devi. It was under worship. It was dressed in raiment. It was decorated. So they would not allow to. It was like their mother. They would not allow Cunningham to examine it. But this conscientious archaeologist saw that there was an inscription on the trunk of the tree under which the goddess is standing, which recorded that this is Devata Mahakoka, and it is the gift of a kitchen manager, and his name is given. He published this inscription, the eye copy, in the full report on Bharhut that he published in 1879. 1973, his Antiquities Registration Act came into force. The wise owner, the wise devotee, he would not describe himself as an owner, the wise devotee, the wise family had this sculpture registered. For that, they had to get it photographed. So they supplied the photographs to the Archaeological Survey of India, had it registered. So the photographs are documented. In 2004, this Mahakuka was stolen. It landed up in the US, where Homeland Security caught it. It was smuggled out by, his name is well known now, one antique dealer based in the US, he is known as Subhash Kapoor. Then they sent me a bunch of some 20 or so photographs, requested my help. They said, we don't know what this is and where from it is, so please help us. Because the inscription was there, and because this family had photographed it, I was able to identify. Now that case is pending because Subhash Kapoor, say coincidentally, the day I visited the owner of this sculpture, on the same day in July 2012, Subhash Kapoor had been extradited from Germany and he was in Chennai. But the case is still running. So when the case comes to a conclusion, suppose he is sentenced, he will spend some time in jail, then the US authorities will have him extradited back to the US and start a case and then return the sculpture to the owner. So such is what happens. This they told, say for us the value is incalculable. It is heritage. But Homeland Security wrote to me in 2012 the commercial value of this sculpture is US dollars 15 to 18 million. So imagine if it is 15 million US dollars in 2012, how much must it be worth now? For us, of course, it is, we cannot put a value on it.
If there are any youngsters who wish to study art history or architectural history, would you have advice for them?
Say, I assume that they don't want to be two-bit scholars. They want what they write should be read by a universal audience. It should be, even the best scholars should take notice of what they are doing. They should not write for only Bombay or Maharashtra or for India, but it should be such that the best international scholars are aware of that. For that, they must use libraries. Nowadays, say libraries don't have much money, but nowadays the internet is there. So they should all the time use the internet. Even very old 19th century publications are available there in your drawing on your computer. Do that. Then don't just rely on photographs in books. Go to museums. Don't just go to museums alone, because museums have objects that have been removed from their context and displayed on a pedestal. Go to sites. Go to sites and have a feeling for the site itself. Then you will understand. Do that. Then write and be prepared to discard your draft, do it again, discard again another draft and do it again. And not only that, don't be only an Indianist. Say the best scholars study Indian art, but they are also familiar with the Tang period Chinese art. They are also familiar with other art. So be broad based. I read somewhere that Giuseppe Tucci, Professor Giuseppe Tucci of Italy, the great Buddhist scholar, he would insist that anyone who wanted to study with him must know Sanskrit, Pali, Chinese, Japanese and Tibetan, apart from any other foreign language. Unless he knew those languages, he was not welcome. We have to be as demanding as him.
Another question I had was what kind of roles can educational institutions play in documenting various kinds of sites and incorporating them into their teaching?
What kind of role can an educational institution play? That is half. The other half is what kind of role should the government agency play? Say that educational institutions can send out their enthusiastic students. Young students are very enthusiastic. They are very passionate. Provide them with even rudimentary camera and a tripod. Send them out to survey villages. Like there used to be, even now there is in the ASI, there is a village to village survey. Send them out to those villages. First, let them contact the authorities, the district authorities. Then have any antiquities photographed. Report them to the collector or district authorities, tehsildar, and also to the concerned circle superintendent. Let the students and the educational institutions not dissuade the authorities and the villagers not to renovate or restore an antiquity themselves, but leave it to the proper authorities at the Archaeological Survey of India or the State Directorate of Archaeology. That is how we can pay our debt to our heritage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.